Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. This is the podcast that helps you learn about the economic world happening around you every day. I'm your host, Chris Krug, CEO of the 501c3 nonprofit, nonpartisan Franklin News Foundation. Everyday Economics is a production of America's Talking Network. And you can check out all of our podcasts at americastalking.com. To support Everyday Economics, please make a tax-deductible charitable contribution by clicking the link in the show description. We're recording this episode on Wednesday, November 27th. Joining me, as always, my friend and colleague, Dr. Orphe Divounguy, PhD economist. Dr. O, every once in a while, I like to take something out of the headlines that we find to be interesting. There was a conversation between CNBC and Barbara Corcoran, who I think most people know from her role on Shark Tank, but has been a successful real estate entrepreneur for decades. Conversation that they had that published into a story on November 25th. The headline was, Barbara Corcoran isn't buying that employees are more productive at home, but she embraces hybrid work anyway. We talk about sort of the shifting attitudes in the around jobs and the way that jobs are constructed, the way that companies are constructed, because they have there's a clear tie between that work and the overall success, how we work, and the overall success of the companies that fuel our economy. You and I have had not necessarily an ongoing disagreement about this subject matter. You feel that people, and we can get into it. I'm not going to tell people how you feel. You can tell people how you feel, but you have an opinion about work and where work occurs and productivity. Why don't you share that? Let's just have a quick conversation.
Well, I mean, people. I'm not even sure people understand what the term productivity means in general. I mean, the idea that some bosses might be upset that you are taking your kids to school and doing the laundry while listening to a Zoom call is basically. Being less productive. I think it's actually the opposite. You are more productive when you get your job done in fewer hours, right? I don't think hours worked is the measure. I think bosses would prefer to see impact as opposed to longer hours worked. And the reality is that when people commute, they spend roughly 8 hours a week commuting, and it's just wasted time.
Yeah. In metropolitan markets, I mean, that's for sure. I think the last time that I saw that measured for Chicago, that the average Chicago worker spends about 50 minutes on average getting to work.
Yeah.
And then you would double that, on a daily basis. So they're spending about 100 minutes, or roughly an hour and a half, an hour and 40 minutes, getting to and from work every day. I guess the question is
the research. Here's what the research says. Like, first of all, it really depends on how work from home is managed, right? If you have
that's where I was going with this, right? I mean, I think for managers, managing, in a remote or what amounts to be a hybrid environment where people are in the office, either 2 or 3 days a week, and then working from home either 3 days or 2 days a week, that the continuity of the virtual office can be challenging to manage. I mean, at Franklin News Foundation, the parent company of America's Talking Network, we're entirely a remote organization. And, I know from the standpoint of communication that can be challenging, because conversations that could be occurring with a drop in to somebody's office or to their workstation, a lot of times they have to be scheduled or they become an email. And we're now inundated with what amounts to be, this sort of, like, I would call it passive communication. I mean, I send an email to somebody, at 10 o'clock. I'm grateful to hear back from them by 10:15. And oftentimes, I send that email at 10 o'clock. I might not hear back until 2 in the afternoon. And that lack of continuity might prevent us from getting something accomplished.
Exactly. That's why there are great productivity tools out there, like
There are.
Slack, for example. And again, they don't sponsor the show, and I'm not plugging them for any other reason than the fact that I use Slack at work, right? Where people can actually get things done. In fact, I find that being on Slack means I'm almost always working.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
Right?
and
People
I
no
don't
longer have to
disagree with
walk to
it.
my desk to talk to me.
Well,
They just Slack me.
there are technology tools that help to bridge it. I mean, I think what's lost though is the humanity in
Oh,
that
for sure.
conversation. And
For sure. That's why I think hybrid is so good. I personally go into the office 2 to 3 times per week. Um, I talk to people face to face. I
right,
interact. We have great exchanges of ideas. I think you can't replace that in the same room brainstorming, right?
agreed.
Especially in a tech environment. Just it's important. And so I like the hybrid situation. It works for me. You got to find what works for you. But ultimately, I think the winners outweigh the losers. The benefits outweigh the cost. And if it's done well and managed properly, you can get amazing results from your employees by allowing them to work instead of commuting.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. I don't.
Right.
It's hard. It's hard to disagree with that. If you can get that time back in terms of productivity over the course of a day, and there is a real value in doing that. I mean, it's the job world is changing, and there are
And
there's a
you want
percentage.
happier workers. Happier workers are more
Absolutely.
impactful, produce better results. The last thing you want, we lived in a world where we had to get it to the office every day, Monday to
Yes.
Friday. And sometimes it came at the cost of not seeing our families, not spending time with our loved ones.
Yeah.
Uh, Families were destroyed because of work at the
Yeah.
extreme, on the
I,
extreme, right? And
I,
so,
I think it really does depend on the environment that you're in. Obviously, if you're in a manufacturing, or if you're
yes,
in a
you have to
distributing
be in,
business or
of
something like
course.
that, I mean, you actually need people to physically be there, and
That's right.
there are different kinds of labor. I think for the professionals, um, that hybrid work and remote work are possible. I just see
Remind
their
me again, Barbara.
Barbara
Uh,
Corcoran. Yeah,
yeah, what industry is she in again?
she's in real estate.
Ah,
Yeah,
ah.
yeah, right,
The best companies in real estate have almost their entire workforce
in the
working,
field.
working,
It-
working
yes,
remotely.
yes,
Yeah,
and they should be. So I mean, that where that comes from, that point of view, I think is absolutely tailored to her experience, and I think it would make sense. And of course, CNBC picks her because she's been incredibly successful in the business that she's built.
totally, totally.
But the application to all businesses, wouldn't be the same.
Of course, of
So
course,
good conversation. I appreciate the
of
opportunity
course.
to chat you up with that. So thanks as always, Dr. Rowe. For Orphe Divounguy, this has been Chris Krug. Subscribe to Everyday Economics at americastalking.com.